topic here. There's a lot of talk this week about the Brooklyn Nets uh, not being or just like buying their way into a championship. I think there's a couple of layers here where I agree, but I don't agree 100% the way everybody's thinking. Yes, the New York, the New Jersey, the Brooklyn Nets were able to get to their stature right now from two moves, which happened simultaneously with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant becoming Nets last summer. So that I'd say that was the MVP move that happened because it made the other dominoes fall to where they are now. But if you look at it, it takes this generation's NBA. It takes two superstars to come together. If they're in a franchise that hasn't won in a long time, you need two superstars to go there, and then just start building the winner from there. Like it's basically like it's a follow the leader kind of thing. And is it popular compared to the way it was like 20 years ago, where every team had pretty much like one superstar, and like they all just battled it out between each other? No, I mean, for a lot of the traditional fans, it's not the way to go. It's a bit of a getting over, or like a kind of a cheating tactic. I'd say one of the reasons why the NBA is the way it is now with that structure, I think it's because of the Olympic play and the tightness of the groups when they go into these Olympic tournaments. Like when you look at it from the Magic Johnson, the Michael Jordan, the Larry Bird years, they had the one dream team, but when they were in the dream team, they were well into their 30s, almost pretty much retiring at that point, or mid 30s, had a couple years left before they actually retired. So a lot of these players now, like your LeBron James, your Chris Pauls, uh, Kevin Durant, they all grew up in this structure where they're going to see each other every 2 years, every 4 years from the Olympics. And going into battle, that they end up becoming friends. They end up like building these relationships. They end up not hating each other the same way that, Magic Johnson might have hated Larry Bird, or, well, whatever these situations were. Um, I think that had a lot to do with it. Now, as it relates back to the Brooklyn Nets, we have the two superstars that came over, and now they're building the structure, the winning structure. And what you gain from the winning structure is people will want to come play for you, even if they don't make top dollar. And that's the situation that happened this past week, where Blake Griffin ends up becoming a Brooklyn Net. It was a couple weeks ago, and then last week, LaMarcus Aldridge ended up becoming a Brooklyn Net. Andre Drummond ended up getting bought out by the Detroit Pistons, and now he's a Los Angeles Laker. And those are the benefits of having a winning team. I don't think that the Brooklyn Nets need to apologize to anyone, or I don't think it really cheapens their victory over somebody else, because they're playing within the rules. And like when you're building a winner, where they won was having Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant agree to play with them. That was where they won, and then after that, it just pretty much made all the other dominoes fall. At this point, it doesn't really matter who's the coach or who's the GMs or different things like that. They're all pretty much. I think they're just pretty much all managing themselves, and they're building a winner. Now, what's going to derail them, or what the only thing that has really a possibility of derailing them, is the injuries. Now, James Harden, who seemed to be the one constant out of the big three, who one seems to be at least one seems to be out of the lineup at every time, and now we have James Harden, who's going to miss a couple games due to injury, and that's going to be the big thing. Like, are all three of those guys going to be 100% healthy and going into the playoffs, or are they going to be able to, make it to the championship and, win the actual NBA Finals? That's what remains to be seen. It seems like the injuries are the only things that can really slow them down. All right, so we're gonna move over to hockey now, and right now we got the floor. The top team in the league is the Toronto Maple Leafs, which is fantastic because of the play of Campbell. He's a 27-year-old goaltender who's actually come along. He's come through his share of injuries as well, and now he has a 10-game winning streak, which is awesome, and that's propelled the Toronto Maple Leafs to the top of the North Division. And one serious issue in the North Division itself is coming from Vancouver. Right now, they have 21. It was 18 active players and 23 people within the organization total who are in the COVID protocol or tested positive for COVID-19. At this point, they haven't played in about 10 days, and they've only lost 4 games because they were, luckily for the NHL and for that team themselves, they were one of the teams who had the most games played to that point. So they lost 4 games so far within the last 2 weeks, but it's to the point where they have a game scheduled on Monday. They don't know if it's a very fluid situation. They don't know if they're going to have enough players to field it, or if they're going to have to call up a bunch of minor leaguers to try to get the games in. Because not only does it affect the Vancouver Canucks themselves, but it also affects the other players the other teams that they're supposed to be playing against. And it's a bad domino that's been managed a lot through the course of the season, and changing different days and things like that. But now it's to the point where we're almost at the end here. We're about like 20 games. Everybody's about like 20, 25 games away from the end of the season, and they pushed the year the year was supposed to end for everybody May 10th, and now it's pushed back to the 13th, I believe. So depending on how long the situation drags out, they're gonna have to probably extend it a little bit more, which ends up hurting the playoffs and different domino effects like that. It's unfortunately it's what we're going through as far as the COVID-19 is concerned. But we are trucking forward, and it seems like it's gonna be tough to the finish, because it's not like they're so far behind that they wouldn't be able to make up these games and possibly make the playoffs. So these games definitely have to be played. So it's a close situation to monitor. As far as the East goes, we'll go locally, and we'll talk about the New York Islanders and the Washington Capitals. Both of them are at 50. The New York Islanders, it looks like they were up for a little bit, like holding down the top spot, and then they took a little bit of a dip this week. Now, there's one thing where, as a Rangers fan, I do not understand how this situation comes about. So the New York Islanders last night, the New York Islanders and the New Jersey Devils ended up making a trade where the New Jersey Devils send Kyle Palmieri, who's a former All-Star, and Travis Zajac. They went over to the New York Islanders, and for a couple of picks and a couple of prospects and a first-round pick. Now, it's not the actual deal that bothers me too much. It's the fact that if you talk to any New York Islanders fan and you ask them what team do they hate the most, they're going to say the New York Rangers. And then if you talk to any New Jersey Devils fan and you ask them what team do you hate the most, 9 times out of 10 you're going to get the New York Rangers. Like if you live in South Jersey, then that's kind of you get a bit of a Flyers Devils rivalry, a little thicker down there. But overall, you're going to get the New York Rangers the most. Now, how do the New York Islanders and the New Jersey Devils fans not hate each other? That's what I don't understand. Like I know a lot from both sides. You never really hear any teasing from one or the other the same way, but at Devils games, like everybody whistles and they say Rangers suck just randomly, and and if you go to a Ranger game, like they do the whistle and they do like the Pot Van sucks chant, like even no matter regardless of who they're playing. It's just I think it's insane where how do why don't the New Jersey Devils and the New York Islanders not have this insane rivalry the same way that they do against the New York Rangers? Just like, anytime the Rangers are in the playoffs and they have like any kind of sustainable success, it's pretty much like the Devils fans and the Islanders fans just have like a Justice League moment where they just band together, and then it's just everybody just hates the Rangers. I just don't understand. But if the Devils are going well, like the Islanders are not, trying to throw shade on them, or it's the same thing whether if the Devils are making it, like the Islanders, it just doesn't seem like, it just seems like a regular day. But for some reason, everybody just gangs up on the New York Rangers. I don't understand. Somebody's gonna have to explain to me at some point how that all makes sense. I just don't understand. So this week we had the Pittsburgh Penguins are fully in comeback mode. They end up right now they're in third place, and the Boston Bruins are they're in 40. They're holding down the last spot in the East with 46 points. Locally, the New York Rangers are tied with the Philadelphia Flyers at 41 points. So, depending on how the season ends up, I still have that bet with Harris though, where if Boston finishes with the higher points than the New York Rangers, I have to do a show with a Boston Bruins jersey, which he'll provide because I'm not spending $100, $200 or getting a China jersey for Boston Bruins. But it was looking pretty tight there for a while. It seems like the Rangers and Boston, they were about 3 points away from each other, but Boston has 2 games in hand right now, so that's in their favor. So it'll be interesting to see here. At one point, it looked like I was just dead in the water with this bet, and that the New York Rangers right now they're scoring like 8 goals a game once a week, and that's helping out my cause. That's for sure. And one of the biggest stories in the NHL is the Florida Panthers right now. The Florida Panthers have 56 points. They are on top of. At one point, they were on top of the NHL. Right now, they're just on top of the Central Division, and it's the ebbs and flows of the season. The one thing I think that is the best part of this is the fact that Florida has a winning team and a winning culture to complement Miami side of Florida, which is the closest proximity to where the Florida Panthers play. They have a winning culture right now because they spent so many years since 1996 was the last time they went to the Stanley Cup Finals, and it was great atmosphere. They were if you were watching hockey back then, they had times where they were throwing like rubber rats on the ice every time they scored a goal and things like that. So much to the point that they had to pretty much outlaw it, and the visiting goaltenders would like duck into the nets just because they were all flying in from everywhere. It was a great atmosphere. It seemed like that it was really gonna rock, but then 2 decades later, it just never really took off as far as the success of the team. Which, if no matter where you're at, if the team's not successful, it's gonna hinder the overall operations of attendance and notoriety, especially if you're a new spot, and especially if you have a stadium where it's hard to get to, which is one of the biggest knocks of the BT&T Center in Florida. So if you're not winning, nobody's going, and if nobody's going, that hurts the bottom line, and it hurts players coming in and all different things like that. Now they're at the point where they've gotten enough homegrown talent and other people that they've basically built a winner at this point, and it's really great to see, and it's great to see that the hot weather Florida team can emerge from pretty much the other side of Florida, because if you look at Florida, there's the Florida Panthers, where like the biggest excuse was, it's hot over there and it's hard to get to and all that stuff like that. And then, you have the example of 1996, and you also have the example of 3 hours away where the Tampa Bay Lightning have this super strong fan base, and they have, their attendance is great, and they have pretty much the same exact challenges that the Florida Panthers do, except they don't. Everybody goes there. They have a winning team. They have the culture where even if they dipped for maybe a 2 or 3 years or so like that, they'd still have a strong enough fan base, and it's embedded into Tampa Bay. And now, well, if Florida can continue to do this, then they'll be able to create a winner, and that'll just be great for the whole state of Florida itself. This is the same argument that I have when it comes to locally, when it comes to the New York Islanders and the New York Rangers. I believe that the New York is not a hockey town. I think that I think overall, if you look at it, it's more of a football town. I don't think, yeah. So I say football number one, baseball number two. Everybody, because there's different slices of the pie. So you don't have like if you go to Boston, you have one team in every sport. So 9 times out of 10, people just like that one team. Everybody here is they have the split pies because every sport has two different um, two different local teams to choose from. And so right now you have the New York Islanders, New York Rangers. There's one aspect of the rivalry that I personally don't get into, and that's if the New York Islanders do well. The same way I would look at it if I was reversed, and if the New York Rangers do well. Now, any New York team that comes out of New York and is successful, and then ends up making deep playoff runs, and having ultimately winning the Stanley Cup and bringing revenue and bringing notoriety to New York, that's good for New York, and that's good for New York hockey. Whether it's the New York Islanders and the New York Rangers, there's different reasons why it's better for different fans. But overall, if one of those teams ends up being a dominant winner and then consistently wins year in and year out, it's going to be great for hockey overall in New York. Right now, there is one hockey arena in Manhattan. There's about 2 or 3 in Queens, and that's pretty much it. So, if you look at it from a point of comparing it to other places that would be deemed as hockey towns, maybe like a Boston, where you have tons of other arenas and different places to play, because it not only is hockey big with the Boston Bruins, but also because of the other colleges in the vicinities. Those are real hockey towns, and those are places that have the establishment. You have Minnesota, which is supposed to be the state of hockey. That's what they're dubbed. Arenas all over the place. Like, these are actual hockey towns, and I think that one of the reasons why New York is not an actual hockey town is because the teams haven't been good enough for long enough stages of lengths of time. So the New York Rangers had their run. They won the Stanley Cup in 1994. Everything exploded at that point, but then they went through between 1998 and I think it was 2004. So they went through that time where just they weren't making the playoffs at all. The New York Islanders went through they won 4 championships in a row between 1980 and 1984, and then they didn't do anything really for 30 years after that, until just a couple of years ago they won their first playoff series in 23 years. So it's just basically the dearth of them not winning that leaves New York. If you have your pocket of hardcore fans, which you're always going to have in every sport in every state, but it goes beyond that to the point where when is it going to have the actual the notoriety throughout the whole state? And I think that right now we're at a point where it's getting better than it was like 20 years ago, but it's just ongoing. And one reason why I wouldn't personally be mind at being a Ranger fan is if the New York Islanders were to do something and were to eventually win the championship, because it's good for New York and it's good for hockey in New York. It's not going to make everybody happy in New York. A lot of people would debate me on this, especially depending what side of the fence they're on. But if you look at it from a overall standpoint, it's good for hockey in New York. That's one of my takes on that. So, all right, so then we'll move on to the West. Right now, Colorado is up. They've finally woken up from their long slumber of seemed like they were kind of just swimming in the middle there for a long part of the season, and it seemed like they were gonna. It seemed like they were just kind of, like not taking it full advantage of the season, or like they had all the weapons there, but they weren't able to put it all together. Now they're to the point where they're just clicking on all cylinders, and every facet of the game they're just absolutely dominating. They're blowing some teams out. They're winning defensive battles. They're goaltending. Philip Grubauer looks like he might be a Vezina candidate, and it's just like everything's going well in Colorado right now. Then you have Vegas, Golden Knights. The Minnesota Wild is still hanging up there in the playoff spots, and then we have the Arizona Coyotes, who are holding down the fourth spot right now, which most of what we were saying, Harris and I were talking. We were saying that the St. Louis Blues were going to be, this was going to be a three-team division. It was going to be Colorado, Vegas, and the Blues. And right now, the Blues are not holding up the end of their bargain. It looks like they could possibly miss the playoffs. There's still a lot of season left to go to determine that, but they are not doing what we all thought that they would do, unfortunately. And another surprise team that we skipped over was the Carolina Hurricanes. The Carolina Hurricanes right now are 55 points. They are 1 point away from Florida, and that's another place where Carolina is, obviously not a hockey town, and they went through their bit of struggles with success, and having a dearth of attendance, and looking like maybe that they were possibly eligible for relocation and things like that. Now they have a great coach in Rob Brendamore. They have a great defensive system there. They have a great goaltending. I mean, they've had their share of injuries. They've went 3 deep into goaltenders, and it seems like any goaltender they put out there is just gonna have a great game and not give up too many goals and give the offense a chance to win. And I think it's a great success story, and it's great for that state itself, because they do have their pocket of hardcore fans, and now any success they'll be able to build on that, and the NHL will be able to grow at that point. So, back to my all right. So one thing that I forgot to mention as far as the Devils and Islanders wheelings and dealings. Last year, the New Jersey Devils ended up trading their captain at the time, defenseman Andy Green. He ended up going to the Islanders in it wasn't as big of a deal as this one, but it was still, it was a noteworthy deal at that point. And 2 years ago, there was a trade between the first ever trade between the Rangers and the Devils was Michael Grabner going from the New York Rangers over to the New Jersey Devils. At that point, it seemed like the Devils were trying to make a little bit of a playoff push there. So there is, I guess maybe the tide is just getting a little different, where people are just trying to make deals as best as they can at this point. But it's still weird. It's still weird that openly the Devils and the Islanders can pretty much like root for each other and like be BFFs at this point, and then everybody's just going against the New York Rangers. I don't understand. I'm gonna have we're gonna talk to we're gonna take that to Sean next week when he comes in. Sean's a big Islanders fan. Maybe he can explain to me how that whole demographic works, because I just do not understand. So, we have a couple of minutes left on this show. So, one thing that I'd say, the COVID situation has thrown its wrenches into a lot of what normal fanatical sports fans do. A lot of them, whether it's go to games, whether it's go to every single game, whether it's go to road games. Everybody has like their own different things. One of the things that I really enjoyed doing was going to road games, and right now with the different COVID restrictions, it's not exactly the best thing to do right now. But I'd say for me, I enjoyed road games a lot more than home games. I think because when you're watching, when you're at a home game, it's great, and obviously everybody's on the same side, and the atmosphere, and it's all great. But then you go to different games, and it's all pretty much the same thing. When you go to road games, not only are you traveling and taking in the different sites of the city and that general area where you visit, but you're in a situation where you see when you go into a different arena, you're seeing everything different. Like the sight lines are different, the color schemes are different, the music is different, the lighting is different. It's a lot of different things, and I think for fans that aren't able to travel as much, once we do get our COVID lifted for good, I think that I always heavily recommend it to people, and I think over time a lot of people have gravitated more toward it because it's new and it's fun. It ties in your sports fandom with traveling and seeing different things, and sometimes even, I mean, New York is one of the most expensive places to actually watch a game itself. As far as New York Rangers, New York Knicks, and things like that. I mean, even when the teams are not that great, like it's still very hard to get into the Madison Square Garden for under $100. So sometimes you could even bundle the deal, and you'll end up going to a cheaper game. Like if you end up going to like a Pittsburgh or a Washington or you know different places like that. I think uh, it's also the seeing how different fans operate. Seeing how they have their own different routines and their own different fan like fan level things, like maybe they'll like everybody's like shouts at a certain point during a certain part of the game and different things like that, like what different chants that they have, like one we'll take the guy in St. Louis. There's one guy who apparently stands up and he throws a towel every time the Blues score, and then simultaneously has everybody chanting how many times they score, like 1, 2, 3, or however way it comes out. Like different things like that. Those are things that you wouldn't know normally unless you're either knowing fans of those teams or if you actually go to visit and experience it. And I think that unless you're like just a super cool fan that doesn't like anything but your actual teams, I think it's something that it's very enjoyable to watch for other people. So and there's also the meeting different people, as far as learning that they're not so super bad. I know that I personally spent 4 years living in Boston, and as a New York everything fan, and from the way you dress, even sometimes the way you talk, meeting different people. One of the things that I learned mostly was that not every fan in Boston sucks, and not Boston doesn't suck in itself. Like you may hate the sports teams during different times, but you know th- the people that you meet there, the venues, the way they're structured, and different things like that. It's all great experiences, and I think that it's great for people who have an open mind and they can live a little instead of just staying in their shelters and what they want to be. But then you also tie it into your team so that you could also be yourself and just go against the grind and not do the most popular thing at that point. I know there was I remember one time very 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 vividly was my first New York Rangers versus Boston Bruins game, where I go into the Boston Garden. Oh, I'm sorry, the TD Garden, and I'm on the escalator, and here I am with red, white, and blue, looking all super bright. Not super bright to me, but as far as the day progressed, it was very very bright. So I turn around on the escalator going up, and then all you just see is a sea of black and yellow and white. And at this point, I'm looking at myself and I'm like, all right, I'm wearing red, white, and blue. I can be like anybody could see me from anywhere at this point, and it's so much fun, and it's like it's a different kind of fun. It's not the same fun that you would deal with just going to a regular home game, and that's it. Basically, I feel like just going to home games is just like if you go into a movie theater and you just like you sit down, you watch the movie, and then you come out and then you go home. But when you do the road games, it just adds on a different layer to it. All right. So, then there's another topic that I've always wanted to cover here is stadium sports food. Is it overpriced? So I think personally, I'm not a person who goes to different places and like eats a bunch of food. But I will say that at the times that I've eaten food at the stadiums, arenas, however you call it, it's expensive, but a lot of times it's really filling. I know there was one time where I got a ridiculously large cheesesteak at Yankee Stadium, and I didn't realize how much it was. I mean, I didn't realize how much like the size of it was. You think like, oh, $27. It's like, it's Yankee Stadium, whatever it is. But I mean, they brought this thing and I ended up having to like give half of it away. It was just amazing. And I think there is some value to these things. I think a lot of it is some of the things that you get at the stadiums or at the sporting events, you're not able to get anywhere else. So that's a part of the value itself and why it's not exactly the worst thing in the world to overpay. Maybe like spend like $9 for like a tray of French fries if it comes like with different things that you wouldn't normally get anywhere else. I'll tell you one thing. One thing that I miss about MetLife Stadium is there was a place called Fat Rooster, which is in the 300s, and that place had the best beer cheese fries. I would go there. Ever since I discovered it, I would go there even if I was full. I'm in MetLife Stadium. I'm going there and I'm eating this, and it's just like that's one thing that I miss about it. I'm hoping that if we can get back to regular football in September of 2021, that I could walk in and this place will be there. I don't know exactly if that's going to work out because, you don't know what the different licensings and things like that are. But I could always hope that it's going to be there and it's going to be great because like every place that I go to now, anytime they have beer cheese, I get it. And it does not even come close to the beer cheese in this stadium. And it was $12 and it was just like I'd pay $24 just to have the same thing. It was just amazing. So if something's good enough, you might as well splurge on it and get it. And the tickets are enough. Sometimes even going back to the New York Jets fandom, if you're going at the end of the year, you're only paying like $10 or $20 to go to the games anyway. So you might as well splurge out, try some different food and try some different stuff like that. All right. So that actually wraps up our show for this week. Thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in. And next week we'll have Sean McClain back in. My name is Alfonso Caldero, LDM Radio Sports Talk.